Good evening, Avini Vibes. Welcome. Tonight is Thursday, July 7th, 2023, and it's very, very exciting because the team is growing. It's amazing. It's growing every week. So we just thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. And I do just want to make the disclaimer, we make no medical claims. And what we'd like you to do is if you could mute your phone if there's a lot of background noise, and if you want to jump in and give a testimonial, you can either just raise your physical hand or you can raise your hand down in the bottom. Okay, so we do have this evening, we have a guest. And what's interesting, our guest is not here yet because he's in another time zone, but he texted me and said he's on his way. So Doug Dickey's going to join us tonight. For those of you who haven't heard Doug speak, he is the vice president of sales, and he's brilliant man, brilliant man. Just love listening to him and learning from him. We do have him joining us shortly, but I wanted to kind of let you know that you're welcome. This is a Avini Vibes is a night that we do share on a normal Thursday night. We have a guest speaker and then we share testimonials. So we might have to just do this a little bit in reverse until we wait until Doug joins us. Okay, I believe he's in Cancun, perhaps, but he's on his way. So I'll start with my own testimonial for those of you who don't know. I have a good friend, Ed Kowalski. I call him EQ over here well, he's on my left-hand screen, but Eddie and I know each other quite a long time, and I had a health issue going on, nothing major, but I had a health issue going on, something going on in my legs for about 4 years, kind of itchy and scratchy and on both. And I had gone to a couple different professionals to work on that, to just nothing was happening after 4 years. So ladies, you want to sometimes dress up, put a dress on, feel good, right? Well, I didn't want to do that. So Eddie called me and shared a story that he was experiencing in his own personal health health journey. And I said, Eddie, I think I need some of that. Whatever you're telling it about. And that was the cell defender and the nano silver. So he sent me some, and sure enough, I have pictures to prove it. I have pictures that I took day 1, day 2, day 3. I think day 4 and 5, I called him up and I said, wow, I'm amazed. I'm amazed. So, like, I am just all in. And ever since that day in January, I just have to say the journey's been exciting because some of you I didn't even know back then. And now I'm getting to know you very, very well and working with you. As Chip would say, he's with us to change one person's life at a time. So that's what Avini is about. Anyone want to jump in? Carol, you want to share a minute while we're waiting? Or Chip? I don't know where Chip is, but Carol, why don't you jump in too
Okay.
and share a
Okay.
little?
Well, I actually really do want to share my brother just messaged me, and guys, he's at 100%. He no longer has double vision. He no longer has the ringing tinnitus in his ears so bad he couldn't hear. And now he can eat anything he wants because he has the strength in his jaws back. So yay. Um, and for anyone that didn't know, because I've shared this story, is that, he did the Johnson and Johnson shot, and before they took it off the market, and 2 weeks after he had the shot, he started having these symptoms. And I was like, Dean, it did some amazing things for me. I don't know what to do for you, but let's clean your system out. And he took it on, and he wouldn't tell me for, oh my goodness, for probably almost a month that there was some changes happening, but he just wasn't going to say anything. And then he called me 3 weeks ago and said, 95%, Carol, 95% back. And guys, this really changed his quality of life for 18 months. My brother is a pro golfer and really good. And his team asked him not to golf with them anymore. It was that bad. And he had trained some of them and coached some of them. And then he's a big pickleball player, and had to go down to the smallest level. And it was so hard. And he quit dating because he couldn't drive at night, and he couldn't eat anything but soft foods. So it really changed his quality of life. So when he took the cell defender, oh my gosh. He said, I am a lifer. So he is my lifetime
Thank you, Carol.
customer
Thank you for
on
sharing that
Cell
about your brother
Defender.
Dean.
That's quite a story, Carol. It's a difficult area to venture into because of the heated nature of it. But the term I've come up with, which I'm pretty confident is not a medical term, Avini has as close to an undo button as I've come across.
Yep.
So I'm thinking undo button is not a medical term, but
Nope, it's
you
not.
tell that essentially that's what you offered him.
That's
was
it.
an undo button.
Or a reset or something. But let me tell you, he has his whole life back now. Oh, and by the way, he has a date. And he had quit dating for 18 months. So that's so exciting.
That's a great story, Carol. Thank you for sharing that with some of the guests that are joining us now.
Oh.
Well, see, Mr. Dickey has just come on, and it looks like he might be in the tropics, so you have to unmute. And we've just been sharing some testimonials while you're joining us, but we are looking forward to hearing from you, what you're up to. It looks like there's a nice trees behind you, perhaps. So we are excited that Doug is with us. He is a VP of sales. So welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Sorry it took me a few minutes to get on.
Well, we're happy you're here, and we have some guests, we have some new distributors, so we thought maybe you could share a little bit about some of the products that we've talked about, Cell Defender, and Carol was talking about the Nano Silver. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of your testimonial as well with our guest.
Sure, absolutely. My experience goes back about 3 years when I found the zeolite product. I'm 55 now. When I was 52, I was introduced to zeolite. It was being sold by another company, but it was Rick's zeolite. And I had 27 years before that, I had some issues with my colon caused by pesticide poisoning. I was opening packages, about 15 packages a day, 6 days a week. And so I got a lot of acute poisoning of pesticides. And so I didn't think that there was heavy metals and toxins and pesticides at the time. So I was dealing with the enzyme process, which kind of messes up your colon. And everybody that was at the place that had been there more than 3 years, I'd been there 2, they had colon issues. They had parts of their colon taken out, if not the entire colon. So I went in nutrition to treat that. I decided not to do the colostomy bag and removal of my colon. And so I ended up doing nutrition, felt better immediately, started teaching people nutrition, exercising quite a bit, basically made that part of my and probably about 8 years later, I think I would, and it was much worse. And so taking the nutritional supplements, cleanses, just everything I thought was working, because they say, oh, do a cleanse and your liver dumps the toxins. Well, I found out that's not true. And so the problem was toxic. And so when I started taking the zeolite 3 years ago, I started to get better. Week 1, some rectal bleeding stopped. Week 2, hemorrhoids away. The third week, I had an issue. We'll just say that went away. I think I had a depression. And so I started asking questions, is it possible that dirt in solution could help sort of heal itself? And so because I understand that met the biochemist product, had to find out what was different. And over the course of about 8 weeks, I got better. And I had had issues with my adrenals, issues with my liver. My spleen was swollen. I, of course, had really bad colon issues. I had a heart problem where it would sort of beat in odd ways. And all these things sort of went away, and I couldn't understand why. And so I focused on the information, and I kept taking. I've gotten healthier and healthier every year. I still take what we call the Marthy dose, named after Marthy Littleton, and it's. I think I've cleaned my circulatory system and my lymphatic system and my endocrine organs so that my body runs really, really well. I think it takes years and years and years to clean out your entire body, if even possible, because the rate at which we consume arsenic and cadmium, chromium, and almost everything we eat, it's used in pesticides, fertilizers, feed. They put it in chicken and pig feed. Um, there's just so much toxicity in the world. And so the big thing to me was, here's this zeolite. People have heard about zeolite, been around for, oh, they've been around millions of years, but people have used them and consumed them for its benefit for about 800, 900 years. And essentially that's detoxing the gut, because zeolite in its smallest form is still too big to be absorbed. And so it gets into the body, goes through the tube of your gut, and comes out the back end. And it does great work. But it's mostly full, and it's really dirty, so your body can have reactions to it. It's been around millions of years absorbing these metals and toxins. And so here's a biochemist that, for the reason of trying chemotherapy, which are mostly heavy metals that they use for chemotherapy, trying to remove that, he clean the zeolite. He had to make it small enough to go in the bloodstream. 7 incredible productive years inventing a process to micronize something almost as hard as a diamond. It's as hard as a ruby, 8.4 hardness on the Mohs scale. Try making that sub-micron and not break it in half. And so Rick invented a process. And then he's the only one. That's the category creator. And then he had to clean all the toxins out so that way it would be available to grab new toxins. And then the third thing, he had to activate it, because when you remove all these toxins and metals, it's not as powerful as you need it to be. So he found out how to activate it. And that's really the special nature of what we have versus everything else everybody else out there is consuming. And we have 14 clinical studies that provide safety and efficacy models for how well it works. We don't make claims because the claim is that it removes heavy metals and toxins that get in the way. And we happen to know there's plenty of research that shows why, when with mercury, your magnesium up. That we have studies showing that if you remove arsenic and cadmium, the body starts to function differently. There's studies done. We present a lot of them.com. And these are independent studies referring to clinoptilolite, and some of them refer to micronized and activated, so we know that they're using Rick's product in the study. And so any questions on what I've talked about so far, what you had heard?
No questions? Hey, keep going. We're all ears.
Okay, we of course have the cell defender, the zeolite. The whole purpose is to detox these metals and toxins that are entering our body at 3 to 5 times the rate of what we're able to get rid of them naturally. So they did, when they were doing these studies, they had to define what a natural excretion rate was. So everybody's different. So for instance, Chip's body may be able to get rid of heavy metals through the natural processes better than I do. Maybe he eats more fiber, or he consumes, activated charcoal or bentonite or some other material that would be able to grab the bile, which is how the liver attaches the heavy metals to the bile, and then pull it out through the back end, and it's not reabsorbed. And so his excretion rate, whatever the be, is different than mine. But we would call that excretion rate for him. We'd give it the label 1. And then we would ask the question, okay, due to his diet, what is the amount of toxins that are naturally coming in? And what they found is that it's roughly 3 to 5 times the your excretion. So if your body's able to get rid of a certain amount of toxins, if you're eating really well and you take fiber, you do your supplements, maybe you only have a 3 times concentration of input of these metals and toxins. If you eat horrible, maybe like me, and your concentration, your intake of these toxins may be a 5. And so these are the kind of the rough numbers out there. Well, the zeolite taken cell defender read up to 15 times your excretion rate. So whatever your excretion rate is, using the cell defender will increase that to about 15 times. And again, the rough numbers based on each person, but that's a huge ability. If you can remove enough to get it out of your bloodstream, and then remove a little bit more so where your lymphatic system is cleaned out, and then possibly the third one would be enough to get the entire organ system, really do great things. And so we see people have these sort of miracle responses where when you move the toxins and all of a sudden the liver is much cleaner, it's able to do a lot more things. The adrenals, they stop being in fight or flight when they get cleaned up. And so this whole process starts with Cell Defender, sort of our tip of the spear. Next, we would want to limit what's coming into the body through our gut. And so we have a fiber product that has 3 types of whole food fibers: oat, carrot, and apple. And then we have inulin in very high amounts. Inulin essentially feeds probiotic respiration. So it feeds them an energy source, which they need, but it doesn't really break down all the way. It's sort of a sugar that thinks it's a fiber. And so that feeds the probiotics, doesn't feed the anaerobic bacteria. So you're starving out the anaerobic over a few weeks of time. Plus, as they're eating on this fiber and not able to break it down, they produce different types of butyrate, which is really important for fixing the gut lining. And so our fiber is meant to help reduce that intake of more metals and toxins. And there's other benefits, binding up the food, so your blood sugar balances, even type 1. Notice differences in the blood sugar. Binding up with the bile, as I talked about earlier, is able to remove the bile from the body, so that reduces your triglycerides and your LDL cholesterol, because that's what your body uses to make bile. So it reduces that number. And then also it removes more of the toxins because it's removing the bile. Typically the toxins are reabsorbed with the bile if nothing binds to it. So there's really, really power in this, in the fiber product. And it's sweetened with monk fruit. It's really, really high tech. And then another part is Zimmunity mushrooms. It's 6 medicinal mushrooms. The mushrooms are meant for one main purpose. They're high concentrations of something called 1,3 and 1,6 beta glucans. So the caps, the stems ratio get very big glucan. Or to turn off the autoimmune hyperactivity switch. So as these toxins are flowing back into your bloodstream from your tissue or your fat, you have a detox effect. Well, these mushrooms are about 1,000 times higher concentration in 1,3,1,6 beta glucans than any other product out there. We had a seventh mushroom, and we also had that zeolite, large first pass zeolite that stays in the gut to help remove more and more of these toxins. And it just sort of turns off your body. It tells your body, relax, it's okay, don't worry, don't freak out, as these toxins come back out of your tissue into the bloodstream on the way out through the urine, which is how the zeolite removes it. And
I have
so
a
it
question.
helps with, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. You talked about like a new customer comes on and they start to use the Cell Defender. When do you advise to start with the mushrooms? Right away, or should they wait?
I like the idea right away because it helps the detox process. Imagine you've been storing arsenic and cadmium in tissue and in the fat, and you reduce the amount of arsenic and cadmium, let's say mercury, in the bloodstream. So there's this electrolytic gradient in the bloodstream. And if you don't, your body, once you pull these toxins into the zeolite, they disappear. And now they're leaving through the urine, through the bladder. Now your body needs to grab more electrolytes to rebalance homeostasis, or what's called the electrolytic gradient. And so because it has to rebalance this, it pulls more metals and toxins from other areas. Like even from, people talk about the blood-brain barrier. Do you really want zeolite up in the blood-brain barrier? The idea is your body is constantly bringing metals and toxins back to the liver as it replaces those cells. And so if you can bind them up on the way back to the liver, take them through the liver, out through the kidneys, out through the urine, they're out of the body. And so this electrolytic gradient, or this need for homeostasis of the electrolytes of the bloodstream, is really important, and it does a lot of the work for us. So we just have to have the zeolite in our bloodstream during the time that it's flowing through. And that's a powerful tool that's natural in your body because of the homeostasis, or the necessity for homeostasis of the blood. And so the mushrooms calm the natural hysteria of the immune system. When these toxins come back in, you would normally have a response. The mushroom complex sort of turns off that response. And other people notice, hey, I don't have allergies today. This is weird. I usually get up, I'm sneezing all morning. And they just notice they're not. It's part of this 1,3,1,6 beta glucans that turns off this hyperactive response mechanism. So that's why I have people take this immunity.
I might just venture into the same area where Doug's speaking right now. You probably notice, you hear some of us say seven medicinal mushrooms, and Doug talks about six. I think it's how you count cordyceps. There's actually two different versions of cordyceps in the product: cordyceps sinensis and cordyceps militaris. It's not like that. They're both really, really awesome, powerful mushrooms. And I would say I like Doug's approach of coming with the Cell Defender and the immunity and even additional products at once. If you get around Marcy, who's highly sensitive to everything, she winds up talking to a lot of people that are also highly sensitive to every little change in their lives, especially like children with behavioral issues or development issues, or people that just every little thing messes with them. Sometimes she'll ask them to go a little while with Cell Defender just to simplify and make sure that they know what's going on. She and I maybe approach that differently. I'm probably more like Doug, but when I hear you ask that question, Christine, I'm thinking, where did it come from? And it might be from, you can imagine the people that find Avini. it's people who have searched the world over looking for a solution, and now they come oftentimes to you know, somebody they consider to be really smart, and that person has a Avini, and so that's part of what happens. I don't know if any of that made comfort. I tend to like to just approach everything without additional unnecessary details, and I see Doug does that too. But your question isn't invalid. I mean, if you want to, you can, you know, sneak up on especially the sensitive ones a little bit like that.
Thank you, Chip. What about, can you discuss a little bit about perhaps about the pH? How, you know, if we're trying to balance our pH in our body, how difficult that can be, but how do Avini products, maybe they can assist in that? Or can you answer, share a little bit about that?
Are you talking to Chip or?
Well, why don't we both do
Chip
it,
or
Doug?
me?
Why don't we both do it? You do
as
it.
long as we
do
can
it
hear you,
first.
Doug. You were cutting in and out.
You go first, Doug, and then
Go
I'll
first,
time.
Doug.
Okay, sorry. Of the zeolite. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
So I found it quite interesting. A lot of people take alkaline water. They take different materials to try to raise the 7.43 or 7.45 instead of 7.3, which is the lowest your blood pH can be. And so we're putting zeolite in the body. What's interesting is the zeolite itself doesn't change the pH. It just simply glows an alkaline charge. And the way that it does this is as cations flow into a cage, it causes the negative charge of the cation to disappear as it flows in and gets stuck into the cage. So as the cage is grabbing different metals and toxins and bonding them to the cage, they disappear to the body. That creates a sort of alkaline bubble around it that flows with the zeolite. And what's special about that is there's 2 studies that are done that are in our Avini Health training that refer to, these are independent studies that refer to clinoptilolite causing this alkaline bubble. And when it goes past bad cells that maybe are using fermentation as a way to run because their mitochondria may be dead, that those cells, which typically their p53 gene, which is the apoptosis gene, has been turned off at some point, and they're still able to keep functioning. It turns that or upregulates that p53 gene. And so they believe that the alkaline charge of zeolites stimulate the upregulation of p53. There's another study that says the downregulation of something called p21, which ends up in apoptosis. And this is their kind of estimate because they see these cells trigger apoptosis. And just having an alkaline charge pass through the bloodstream is better for calcium absorption, calcium and magnesium ratios. Hormones are produced much better in a balance of calcium and magnesium in the bloodstream. Production, transport, both necessary calcium and magnesium. And so the zeolite's really beneficial because it's not physically changing the pH. It's just triggering cells that are bad to sort of poke themselves out. And this is kind of the belief system. Again, these are we're simply sort of counting on the same process, allow the body to sort of fix itself, kind of the way it was designed. And we know that arsenic, when it enters a cell and replaces zinc in the zinc fingered protein, that it triggers off the p53 gene. So there's quite a bit known about it in specific little parts. And this is the stuff that I absolutely love that really inspires me to learn more. is these mechanisms of nature and how something as simple as a micronized and activated clean zeolite can trigger these mechanisms to flip back on. And that to me is pretty exciting. Did you want to share something on that, Jim?
Well, I was just thinking that as you were telling that, you were pretty much all around the antioxidant issue also. And those two kind of go together because it's unusual with the zeolite product. Would you take a minute and would you like to take a minute and talk about how zeolite functions as an antioxidant compared to how, say,
Sure.
vitamin, that kind of thing does?
Yeah. So really when you have okay,
Yes.
so the interesting thing is as you go through and read some of these articles on clinoptilolite, studies, reviews, critical studies, and read them that they're referencing, turns out that the same cell defender, we'll say clinoptilolite generically, clinoptilolite abs certain things and takes them inside while while it's going through the body, picks up certain metals and toxins, and then as it goes by a bad cell and it senses the low pH, it can go into that bad cell, but it's attracted to it, and it starts exchanging other things in the cell. And it creates something called ROS, or reactive oxygen species. And in a cell that has mitochondria and everything's functioning, the balance between oxidation and reduction, what we call redox balance, those things happen between antioxidants and oxidants. And so the mitochondria balance that. Well, in a cell that doesn't have mitochondria, that's running off fermentation, the zeolite gets attracted, goes into the cell and goes up next to it and starts exchanging with it chemicals or heavy metals, whatever, that cause a reaction, an oxidation reaction in the bad cell. And it just basically breaks it apart because the cell has no mechanism by which to stop the oxidation process. And so really powerful research being done. This stuff goes back 10 years. They actually refer to their clinoptilolite as micronized and activated. So we kind of think we know what they're talking about, which zeolite they used for their studies. But pretty amazing. Again, something so simple made by nature, changed into a highly technical, healthy product that you can put in your body, has no negative, only an upside, and your body gets rid of it in 8 hours through the urine renewal. So while it's in your body, it's doing nothing but good, and then it leaves your body naturally. And your body even regulates how much it'll take into the bloodstream. 10 to 15 drops for a man. So if, let's say you gave a baby 10 drops, the baby's body may only take 2 or 3 of those drops in the bloodstream. Naturally regulates it based on homeostasis. So there's just no negative to the use of zeolite. It's kind of all good and no bad. And that kind of brings us to the silver product too that I'd like to share. If Elsie wants to share on the cell defender and the pH.
Well, I'll do a summary of what Doug just said, and then we can go to silver. Essentially, what Doug just told you, and I love the details. I mean, I'm soaking all that up and saying, "Oh, that's huge. Oh, that's important. Oh, that's a big deal." But essentially, what Doug just told you is the answer to how can that be, and that is that if somebody gets better using these products, something that was hurting them is being ushered out. It's leaving. That's why they're getting better. And if you need it boiled down, that's what Doug just told you. Now,
Yes, this is. And now on to silver. How's that? Is that good?
Okay, sounds good. So silver, I kind of want you guys to forget everything you know about silver. Um, this week we'll have our newsletter coming out where I've broken down all of the components. I read about 1,000 pages over the last 3 months, and I come up with some amazing studies that point to what makes silver good and what makes it bad. And so I'm just going to kind of talk about, if you're going to take silver, this is what you would want. And this is based on tons and tons of studies that are done. So basically, silver particles, all the way from, thousands of, let's say microns size, 10, 20, 50 microns, all the way down to ionic silver. So very, very, very small, just the ions of silver. The range in production goes all the way. They found that for things to be interactive with bad cells or good cells, bacteria, viruses, all the different types of viruses, parasites, molds, mildews, it pretty much has to be under 200 nanometers, silver particles. Just interaction starts about 1.5 nanometers in all the studies done, and goes all the way down to where ionic is the most interactive with all of those things. The problem with ionic, or anything smaller than 5 nanometers, sorry, anything smaller than 5 nanometers, is it will go in and mess up regular cells. So your regular tissue, the cells that are functioning, they can be messed up. Metabolism, protein synthesis, pretty much every one of the mechanisms that your body uses in healthy cells is interrupted by less than 5 nanometer. So one study suggests that between 5 and 20 nanometer particles, silver particles, were the most effective on everything. So we're going all the way from viruses, bacteria, all the way to supportive cellular health, and completely non-effective for your good healthy cells. So it doesn't enter any organs or anything. So our silver is 7 to 10 nanometers. The second thing is all kinds of different sizes. Spherical seems to have the most surface area. And so spherical at 7 to 10 nanometers also produces something called a membrane bending energy. I didn't come up with the word. These scientists came up with the word. Basically, it's a frequency for the silver particle that attracts it to certain things. And this membrane bending energy attracts it to anaerobic bacteria, to bacteria that are basically harmful, non-aerobic bacteria, so facultative also. Bacteria, it's attracted to bad cells, it's attracted to molds, mildews, you name it. It also has an attachment, its ability to attach to either the glycoprotein receptors on viruses or on the bacteria, all the different attachments it's attracted to and will attach to it. If it's spherical and between 5 and 20 nanometer particles. So these are the kind of the magical numbers, but at 7 to 10, you get this correct membrane bending energy. Our silver happens to have 7 to 10 nanometer spheres, about 995 billion per drop. Now, all the studies that you've ever heard about where silver is harming organs, causing issues, is either due to being smaller than 5 nanometers, or in the production of the certain type of shape and size, they use chemicals to stabilize them. Bromine, bromide, different types of chlorides. They use things that knowingly will kill cells as a stabilizing unit for the silver. When you get smaller than about 200 nanometers, the silver does not want to stay put. It wants to either agglomerate and get larger, or it wants to go smaller until it hits an ionic state. So when you have different chemicals that are holding stable the particles, those chemicals are highly toxic to cellular tissue. And they even admit that if, depending on the silver and the size and the shape that you want, and the concentration, it requires multiple levels of chemicals that are often harmful to the person. So when you hear somebody generalize that silver is harming people's organs, when you go to that study and you read through it, you find out that the production method they use all kinds of chemicals in the process of making it. And those chemicals are still bound to the silver, holding it in suspension. So here's where ours is special. These, the makers of our silver, they wanted something that was effectively bioprotective from the point of not going mold or mildew. They wanted it to be a preservative. So, for instance, if they sell to someone like L'Oreal makeup, they want the lipstick to not grow mold or mildew. And so how they do that is they use this highly structured particles, 10 nanometers, that's being held together in a special way. And what they do is they build a 1 to 2 atom thick silver oxide coating around the silver nanoparticle. And they attach it to the electrons on the oxygen. So the oxygen in the water, the size of the water clusters is perfect to hold the silver in place. So they bond the silver to the water. So it never changes in your body. And in fact, it leaves your body in 24 hours. So it can't get larger and cause argyria, which is where your skin turns blue or gray. And it can't get smaller and become an ionic, where it would act like a heavy metal, causing dysfunction in the cells. So those two major, or that major thing, which is the fourth part, which is stability and purity, makes our product better than anything else that I've found. There are 2 other products where they use potential, which is kind of a stat of all the particles. The problem is you look at it wrong and they fall out of suspension, or they either reduce or they agglomerate. And so highly effective, very bioactive, bioprotective, structured nanoparticles. What's added to that solution, to hold in solution? They use sugars, they use fulvic acid, they use humic acid, they use salts, lots of toxic chemicals. And ours is the only one that doesn't use any of that and is completely stable, even if you boil the water or freeze the water. So anyways, everything that I talked about there's at least 4 or 5 studies on each aspect that make that point. And we just happen to fall into the best product just by sheer luck.
Thank you, Doug. Chip, you want to comment?
Well, one of the things that Doug said in his summary is something I think everyone can use in conversation. Almost everybody has silver someplace in their medicine chest, but they don't use it. Well, externally they do, but not internally the way we use it. And so other people will say, well, I make my own, but you kind of know it's barbaric, made in the garage with a battery. You know, it's a pretty crude method. And I will say, without Doug Dickey, Avini would not have ventured into the world of silver, and we struggled with it a while, and we would not have solved the silver source problem like he just described. But the thing that he said that I want you guys to remember, because you can use it, is that silver has to be the Goldilocks size and shape, which is Avini Nano Silver. If it starts getting too big, now it's colloidal. If it starts getting too small, it becomes ionic. Both of those are dangerous. So that little segment right there, ours is just the Goldilocks size and shape. This is all about size and shape with silver to take it internally. Externally, it doesn't matter. Any of them are fine. But internally, if it starts to get too big, it becomes colloidal. Starts to get too small, it becomes ionic. You see how you just undid the value or that you showed the danger of those two forms that are common. And you also spoke to, you're not going to come up with this way in your garage with a battery to make, 200 atoms in a ball protected by one layer of silver oxide tetrahedrons. You're just not going to come up with that in your garage with your battery. This is the most advanced form. And one of the most important things about the products he's spoken about already, the Avini Cell Defender, the Z-Immunity, and the Nano Silver, you think about the spy counter spy thing between us and our parasites and pathogens. They keep finding a workaround for all of our pharmaceutical drugs, right? They don't have a workaround. The enemies don't have a workaround. The bad bacteria, the viruses, the parasites, the pathogens, so far, they don't have any way to avoid the mechanisms that we're bringing against them. These are beyond their capabilities. I come from the world of military, and you want to have an advantage, and this brings the advantage to us as humans and takes it away from the things that are hurting us.
Alan has his hand up.
Better armed.
A question of Doug or Chip? Alan has his hand up raising. Go ahead, Alan. You want to ask a question?
I want to say this, if I may. I totally, completely appreciate the fact that Avini Health has the personnel and Chip Littlejohn and Doug Dickey to know all the intimate microscopic details and clinical values of all of these, particularly this subject. I found myself lost early on. I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you why that I think what I'm about to tell you is important. My background, high school education, small amount of college, railroad worker for 42 years and 4 days, wallpaper contractor concurrently with that, a daddy, a baseball coach, a church worker, all this. So all of this other stuff, while it's wonderful, is totally beguiling to me. So while listening to what Mr. Doug Dickey said so perfectly well, I boiled it down to this, because he needs to know this stuff. I can't possibly understand. So what I wrote in my little thing is, in our nano silver, the spherical surface area allows more attraction area for the bacteria to be captured and removed than other shapes do. Ours, I think is correct, has something like 999 million spheres per drop. And that is effectively used as a stabilizer and provides higher purity so that it cannot change into something dangerous. And that's what I gleaned from all the wonderful information that he put out there. I can use this, but all the other words, I can't even say them.
Well, Alan, you're going to be the cliff note taker from now on, okay? You and Chip do very good, because some of those that are new didn't know that we were going to get possibly so deep into the science. And perhaps, like you said, you might not remember much of that, but thank you both, Chip and Alan, for getting those cliff notes for us, the things that are important for us, perhaps as not scientists. But what I glean from it is we have by far best and the safest. So thank you for that. Anyone else want to raise your hand? We only have a few more minutes, and I did want to just talk a little bit about quickly the business opportunity. Sure. Go ahead, Chip.
Right quick before we leave, Alan, at one time, Mom and Dad and I were all on the UP. We were all on the railroad, and Dad used to scoop coal in the back of the huge steam engines that ran up and down the tracks. And one of them just moved through the area that's been restored recently. And I have one of these steam engine huge brass bells at my place at the lake that I used to call people to dinner. So that old railroad, it's you got to, you know, it's really, really important when we're meeting each other to find some common ground. And so I can talk railroad. I know railroad. My brother-in-law actually worked on the Manhattan Project, developing the nuclear weapons. He developed the wings for the SR-71, the fastest plane in the world, but he made his career figuring out dynamic braking for railroads. And so essentially what he made was a resistor that could withstand a train slowing down and wasting the energy of a train slowing down because you can't save it. So Alan probably knows a lot about that. So anyway, it's always fun to find, now I know a little bit about Alan, so that was fun for me.
Well, you two will be trouble in Dallas together, I'm sure. You'll be off talking railroad lingo. Doug, I don't know, we're taking you away from your vacation, but we're grateful that you came to join us tonight. Could you give us maybe one closing fact, perhaps, about the business, why this business could be a good opportunity for us to be sharing? I mean, I know personally, but I wanted to hear your words in closing, please.
Sure. One of the points, I can say, like, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. I can, of course, mention the silver in just, 8 or 10 sentences, very simple. But what's important, I think, the most important thing to know, and the brochure that'll be coming out in the newsletter will break it down fairly easily for you. But to know that we went to the most amount of information to kind of back up why our product is so amazing. So that's the most important thing. As far as the business, a lot of doctors, practitioners, they see the products or the company as something they can resell the products to their customers, but there is a really powerful aspect to the network. When we built this, we took out all the gotchas that get in the way. You don't have to sponsor your second cousin on the second Tuesday at 2 to qualify. A doctor, a practitioner, somebody who has a business, not only can you retail it and do well, there's a lot of value in setting up an organization to help people become part of your group and sharing. And so I tell people, when you come across your patients, you have a lot of influence with people. And that's your superpower. And if you believe in the products, you've seen what they can do yourself, then help others join you in getting the word out. Help them become distributors. It's very simple. There's no obligation. Have some as customers also. There's a mechanism by which you need a couple customers and a couple distributors to benefit from the team commissions. But most practitioners don't want to do network marketing. They get overwhelmed with the work that goes into that. If this was set up in such a way that you can use your influence to bring people onto your team, and it will pay you not only through the retail sales, it'll pay you through finding these people, including them. And we've kind of simplified it so everybody can do well. And if you can build a team that way, you'll do very, very well financially over a period of time. Our compensation plan gives you more time. Usually in network marketing, you have everything moves away from you. And so time is your enemy. And we want people, of course, to go out and talk to a lot of people and get busy right away. But time is not against you in our organization. And so take the time to set up a team. Take the time to have multiple people that can introduce new people to your organization. It's really worthwhile, and being a part of Avini is really worthwhile. It's, in my view, it's one of the most important things you can do in your life, because there's so many people that if they just could remove the toxins from their bloodstream and their endocrine system, their lymph system, could have these life-changing effects like I did. They can gain their life back and have a second chance on their life. And that's what we're asking people to get out and share with the products and really become a person that's going to be helping lead, people to Avini. It's not just a product. It's not just a business. It is a crusade to save people's lives. And we have hundreds and hundreds of people that wouldn't be here today if they hadn't used the products. And it's really worthy of everybody's full effort. So thank you so much for the time, and anything I can do to help any one of you, let me know.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight. Wonderful speaker. I'm sorry that we had a little technical issues tonight, but we do have, there's a couple of recordings. I know Dr. Susan had interviewed Doug as well for about an hour, and is very, very clear. We can always share that as well. But what he said is spot on. It's a crusade to help people. Just think how many people could be suffering and having issues. And we have been, I always say, like, we've been chosen as a group here, to share. So don't be afraid to share. Reach out to your friends, your family, your neighbors, those who are in need. And I think Kyle used the term of just be the what did you say, Kyle? The one who, you're the switchboard. We're just a switchboard. That's what we are. We're the switchboard. So we're here every Thursday night. If you're new, get with the person who invited you to the call tonight and learn more about it. There's beautiful resources, tons of resources available that we can learn together. Next week, I will be in Ireland, so I won't see you next week. 2 weeks, I'll be gone. We have 2 other hosts. Carol will be hosting, Kyle will be hosting. So I'll be off riding horses in Ireland, and you bet I will be bringing this bottle with me. Can you see that? Yeah. 4 hours a day on horseback across Ireland. So I'll be taking that with me. But anyway, God bless each and every one of you. Have a wonderful night. In light of time, we're going to cut this off now, but feel free to shoot us a text and we will share the recording as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.